Hello and welcome to the Final Frontiersmen, a YouTube channel about all things Trek with a heavy emphasis on the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game. This is not going to be about the role-playing game, this is going to be about the real world. I have a special guest with me today. I am joined today with Professor Natasha Warner, who has a very, very interesting career and an amazing connection to Star Trek through this career. So I'd like to welcome Professor Warner to the show. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. This will be fun.
Yeah, I've been excited. We've been planning this for a couple of months now, trying to get the schedules to line up. So I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So thank you again. Can you just introduce yourself for the viewers so everyone knows who you are?
Hi, I'm Natasha Warner, and I'm a faculty member at University of Arizona in the Department of Linguistics. And I teach a Klingon language class some of the time. I'm also head of the department currently of linguistics at University of Arizona. And I have a phonetics lab that I'm director of, completely unrelated to Klingon. And another part of my research, so the phonetics lab works a lot on perception of speech, especially perception of spontaneous conversational speech, where you leave a lot of the sounds out and whole words out, and yet we understand it just fine. And how do we do that? And then the other part of my research is on Native American language revitalization. I work with a tribe called Mutsun, a language called Mutsun, M-U-T-S-U-N. And it's a Native American language of California from the San Juan Bautista area. And there hasn't been a fluent first language speaker who acquired the language as a child since the last person passed away in 1930. But there are written records of the language, and the community members are there. They're just speaking English. And I've been working with the community for over 25 years on trying to get the language back out of the written records so that they can learn it and use it in the community. So I teach a Klingon language class, but that's kind of for fun.
Yeah.
Research-wise, I'm split between speech perception, especially spontaneous speech, and language revitalization.
That is amazing. That's fascinating. And that's such a really because I know there's a lot of languages that disappear, and especially a lot of native languages that aren't maintained because you just don't have the speakers carrying on that tradition due to, well, a lot of issues, of course. So to actually be working to preserve, and not only preserve but revitalize a language before it can disappear, that is fascinating. So I want to talk to you more about that too.
Let's just be blunt on endangered languages. They're endangered largely because of genocide.
Oh yeah.
We can just be blunt about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's really no way around that. There's maybe after the show I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about. There's another group I'm part of where an issue similar with a native group up in Canada and Alaska came into play. But I'd like to talk to you about that. But I ramble a lot, and I'll probably take it way off course. You're back to Klingon, back to Star Trek. So let's go that. Well, first back to Star Trek. Can you just tell how did you get into Star Trek, and what about it made you a fan?
So when I was in high school, okay, so first of all, for time context, I was born just after original series stopped airing. Not that I would have been a newborn Trekkie, I can't say that, but so I was not around for original series when it was new. But when I was in high school, towards the end of high school, I had a couple of friends who were also into science fiction and geeky kinds of things. And I don't remember who started it or how we decided to start it, but we started watching Star Trek together. And by this point, it was the late 80s or second half of the 80s, and there were VCRs. VCRs were a new thing. And as a teenager, it was very exciting to get to go to the movie place and rent some old episodes of Star Trek and take them home and watch them in the basement with one's friends who were just as geeky as oneself. And so we had a wonderful time watching all of original series that way. These days, I practically can't stand to watch original series, but we liked it then. And so in fall of '87, I started college and Next Generation came out. And by that point, I had managed to locate a bunch of equally geeky Trekkie friends in the dorm. And so we were sitting in the communal TV room of the dorm downstairs in the basement, watching as Next Generation started. So that was wonderful also. So I guess that's how I started being a Trekkie and how I got into it. And I loved it. So there was no missing any of it after that, really.
Oh, that's great. So you got to see TNG as it aired, yeah.
Yeah, got to see Next Generation as it aired. It was new. And I was a freshman in college and exploring what my life was going to be anyway. I didn't watch all of Star Trek as it came out, so I didn't get into Deep Space Nine while it was on. I don't know why not. And I watched the first few years of Voyager while it was airing, and then we moved out of the country and didn't have access to it. And when we moved back, we didn't get TV for a long time. And so I didn't wind up watching the rest of Voyager as it came out, and I didn't even know about the series Enterprise at the time. By that point, I lived in the US, but I had a newborn baby and no TV, so there's that. And then some years ago, when Discovery was about to come out, we had no streaming services. We don't have Netflix. We didn't have anything. Easy to avoid TV addiction that way. And we heard that this new show was coming out, and my son and I collectively put our feet down and informed my husband that we would be subscribing to CBS, which then turned into Paramount, and that his only choice was whether to pay extra to avoid the ads or not. And not getting it was not a choice. And so then once we had access to all of the Star Trek, the obvious thing was on nights when there wasn't a new one. And so then I watched my way through Deep Space Nine, the rest of Voyager, Enterprise, all of it.
That's great. So it was only until maybe the last few years that you caught up on all the shows you missed?
Right.
Oh, that's
right. And
that's...
so I've been a Trekkie since high school.
Yeah.
I've been to one convention, only one, but back in college. But yeah, a couple of years ago, my level of Trekkiness definitely took off.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, we're in this Renaissance era of Star Trek now.
Yeah.
So
there has never been a better time period in history to be a Trekkie.
Exactly. I mean, if the
at
late
least up
90s,
until today when they canceled Prodigy.
Yeah. This morning, the news, the first thing. What
it's
a
awful.
terrible thing to wake up to. Like
yeah.
But
I'm
stunned.
Yeah, sad.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess in combination with having access to all of it, and of course the new Trek like Discovery and so on are so well done. So you're not watching them shake the camera and jump over the over the railing anymore. And then when I wound up teaching the class as well, it's like, okay, I'm getting more seriously into this.
Yeah, there's a lot to love about now, and there's a lot that's bringing in new fans, which is good. And one of the things we like to do on the channel, or that we hope to do more, I should say, on the channel, is just try to meet more and more fans like us and say, like, what got you into it? Why do you like it? And, like, what do you love about it? Do you have any favorites, like favorite captains now that you've seen everything?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, please share. Please share.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm not one of the Trek fans who complains about how much they hate one thing or the other.
Okay,
I don't appreciate that kind of fan much at all.
Same.
Yeah, I sort of wind up going, do you like it or not? And if you don't, why do you need to tell us so much about why you don't? Take away everyone else's enjoyment. But
right.
yeah, so although I find it a little hard these days to watch Kirk chasing women and stuff, but apart from, like, well, forgive that. Apart from that, I like all of the Trek. But obviously, like anybody, I suppose there's ones that I especially love most. So I love Janeway and Voyager. And that may not be a popular opinion. That's one of the ones that gets complained about a lot.
Yeah, everyone complains about something in particular, but you're not going to get that complaints here. No.
Yeah. I mean, I think it shouldn't all be about identity, and it shouldn't all be about representation, but representation most definitely does matter.
Oh, yes.
I am a white, generally perceived as female, now middle-aged person. And yeah, I like the captain who is a white middle-aged woman.
But she's a strong character. The character itself is amazing.
Yeah. Well, and I liked Voyager when it was new. And like I said, I saw the first few years as it came out, and I liked it. There was no question of whether I was going to watch it. I liked it a lot. But when I started watching it a few years ago, so at the time when it was new, I was in grad school. I was in my mid-20s, and I liked it. Started watching it a few years ago, coming up on 50. And on top of that, I'm a department head at work, so I manage people. And watching a woman, a strong woman, manage people the way that she does in her delightful fictional universe, where managing people usually comes out the way she wants it to. I want to get to run things at work the way she runs the starship.
Yeah.
And of course we can't. We have to do a lot more building consensus and a lot more, So she listens and she tries to build consensus, but then she says, here's what we're doing, and that's it.
Yeah.
And she calls them on it if they're not doing what they need to. And yeah, so she's a delight to watch as a manager.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A manager, a leader, and just...
In real life, of course, I much prefer to work through consensus and discussion and getting everyone's opinions rather than being in charge. Of course, in real life, I much prefer that.
Yes.
But boy, it would be tempting occasionally.
just draw the line. Yeah. Put the 4 pips on your collar, and you make the calls, right?
Well, I don't remember which episode it is. It's one of those early ones where Tom Paris and Neelix are behaving in a rather juvenile way, and they've just gotten into a food fight and gotten spaghetti all over each other and so on, and he happens to call them into her office, into her ready room, and first, after saying something like, does someone want to explain about the spaghetti all over them? And then after she assigns them to go on an away mission together, which is the last thing they want to do, and she says, whatever is going on between you, solve it.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't we all wish that we could do things that way in our real life?
Oh yeah. That's good. I have to agree, like my captain, my favorite captain of all the series too is Janeway. Voyager is my series. I mentioned briefly probably on the channel before, but after the first season aired, I was in like a really bad traffic accident, and I was hospitalized for a while, but I was home recovering for about 6 months. I couldn't sleep. I was just up all night in the freezing cold in winter in Pennsylvania. Had really nothing to do, but I had all my VHS of Voyager that I was recording as it aired, and I watched every single episode of season 1 again and again every night for 6 months. I felt like I was on the ship. So Janeway was my captain. She was the one that got me through my hard time. So Voyager's my show, and yeah, I can't think of a better captain for me than Janeway. And yeah, I love that scene you pointed out too.
Yeah, the other thing besides her being, because I've emphasized her being sort of a hard-hitting managerial style, but there's a lot more to it. Voyager is all about second chances. and about giving people second chances, and people then living up to the chance, living
Yes.
up to the opportunity. Um, and I guess I like Next Generation. I love
Mm.
Next
Mm.
Generation, but they started off with the dream team. They
Oh
started
yeah.
off with the
Yeah.
perfect
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
because, as makes sense, because it's the flagship of the Federation, the flagship of Starfleet. And so the bridge crew on there is going to be people who were pretty competent at everything they did.
Yeah.
And the only character they got in there who really wasn't necessarily competent at all things was Barclay. So
Yeah.
brilliant, but not good at some
Yeah.
other stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and so Next Generation starts off with people who are perfect. And you can't picture yourself being part of that world very well,
It's hard. Yeah.
since most of us are not perfect. Um, and you can't picture working in a setting or living in a setting that would be like that. I mean, it's a nice ideal. Um, and so also all of the conflicts in Next Generation, all of the plot, almost all of it has to come from outside.
Mm.
Um, so, oh, we ran into an alien this week and this thing happened.
Yeah.
Oh, we're taking some ambassadors someplace and this unexpected thing happened. Deanna's mom showed up. Oh boy.
Oh boy is right.
Yeah. So, yeah, yeah. Um, the only way that any of them cause a conflict or a problem or something to be solved is either alien mind control, um, or illness, I suppose, or something. So, as opposed to both DS9, but even more so Voyager, starting off with this group of people, Voyager in particular, starting off with this group of people who did not choose to be together, were not picked for their jobs. Even the Starfleet ones mostly weren't picked for their jobs, because with a third of the crew killed in the first episode, everybody's going to get shuffled,
Yeah.
Or take on extra jobs. And notably with adding the Maquis into the Starfleet crew, so so people who don't want to be together and who didn't go to Starfleet Academy or flunked out of it or whatever. And so it's all about second chances, and all about people both dealing with their past trauma, or just dealing with who they want to be now.
Yeah. And I one thing again we're going to get to Klingon soon, but one thing
Yeah,
like
yeah.
especially about Voyager that I like is I think it takes the previous stereotypes that we see of the different people and species in Star Trek and puts them out of their element. You have a Vulcan security
Mm-hmm.
officer, not science.
Yeah.
There's a Klingon engineer, not security. You have what was shoot? There's another one that which character is escaping me now, but it's taking characters that you think, okay, Klingon is all action, Klingon is the fighter, but it's not that. It's B'Elanna who is,
Right,
she's in charge of
right.
keeping the ship moving, and then
Mm-hmm.
Tuvok, the one you think the cold logic person, he's the one that's going to defend everyone. So
Mm-hmm.
it really shifts the view that I think we've
Yeah,
had
yeah,
on what the different characters and what the different peoples in the Star Trek universe are, and shows that they are as broad and varied as humans have been shown throughout all of the series.
yeah, yeah. That was a really good thing about it. Yeah.
So Voyager,
Um,
yeah, Voyager, I love
yeah.
Voyager.
In the modern, more recent Trek series, I love Discovery. Um, and Michael Burnham is also a fantastic character. Um, and although I was surprised when I went back and rewatched some of the first season to realize how much conflict there had been among the main characters at that point.
Yeah.
And that it really took a while before they were this sort of, people talk about chosen family,
Mm-hmm.
before they were this family-like group. And Voyager was also very much about that, about these people stranded with nobody else. It's a relatively small ship, much, much smaller than Enterprise. And they got nobody else. And so they really become family.
Yeah.
And I guess probably a lot of us like to imagine ourselves in a world like that.
I think
Um,
so. Yeah.
but yeah, I love Discovery, and I love that they went forward to the, what is it, 23rd century or something,
They went
way in the
to
future.
32nd. Yeah.
Sorry, 32nd. Yeah,
Yeah.
get my numbers straight. Yeah, 32nd went from the 23rd to the
Yeah.
32nd.
It's I
Um,
always remember just swap the numbers around. That's how I know.
yeah. And I love that they did that, the 930-year jump or whatever,
Yeah.
because really the Star Trek universe has been getting pretty well explored.
Yeah.
And if
I
we're going to
thought
have
the show
something
got
new happen.
it got so much better with that time jump because it's giving us
Hmm.
something new to explore, to play with. And
Yeah,
not
yeah.
just what's there now, but we also don't know what happened in that almost millennia
Hmm.
beforehand. So
Yeah,
it's exciting.
yeah. We have a couple bits and pieces of the history in there,
Yeah.
but not much. Yeah, I'm really hoping that new series they're talking about, Starfleet Academy series. I'm really hoping that's 32nd century.
I hope so. Yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, nobody knows for sure, but fingers are crossed. I mean, they did send Tilly there, so
Yeah.
she might be our lead for that series, or at least lead cast for the series. So I want to see more, especially with Discovery ending. So I don't want that
Mhm.
to be the end of 32nd century for us now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's move on to Klingon here. So let's
Mhm.
go on because again we I especially I could talk about Star Trek all the time. And if you would ever love to come back and just talk about any of the new episodes, please, when it fits your schedule,
Uh-huh.
you're more than welcome. But what now you mentioned that you are the head of the linguistics department, like you are a professor of linguistics, and you mentioned all the great work that you're doing, the research you do. What was it about Klingon that got you interested and like you decide to even make a course out of it too?
Mhm. The making a course, I have to thank a colleague at UCLA, Pam Monroe, who was teaching a freshman seminar similarly, like, I don't know if hers is one unit or what, but similarly not meant to be a full course,
Mm-hmm.
not meant to be a full university regular course, but and on Klingon. And I was at a conference with her, with Pam Monroe, and she mentioned this, and I went, "Oh, that's a great idea. I should propose one of those for our freshman seminar system." Um, it turns out that ours have more contact hours than UCLA's corresponding thing does, and so I wound up not basing it on how she taught it at all.
Mm.
Um, and I don't know that one's better or worse or more fun or whatever. Um, but I wound up doing fairly different things with it than she had. But absolutely, I'm so grateful to her that she brought that up, because I hadn't thought of it, and it's been so much fun. And I think it has for the students too. What got me into Klingon language, though, and again, I don't speak it. I study it. I understand the structure reasonably well. I can parse sentences. Um, uh, I can write interlinear glosses for sentences, which is a thing linguists do to figure out all the bits and pieces and how it makes the meaning. But I don't speak it conversationally at all. But part of the tie-in for it is a very unusual and surprising one. Mark Okrand, who designed Klingon, wrote the Klingon language, and continues to add new words to Klingon, and is the authority. Mark wrote his dissertation as a grammar of the Mutsun language, which is the language I work with in California.
Wow, that's a
So in
connection.
1976, I think it was, Mark Okrand's dissertation was a grammar of the Mutsun language. And we, the community members and I, just to be clear, I'm an outside linguist, I'm not a community member. The community members and I are eternally grateful for that grammar that he wrote, because it's a fantastically good grammar of the language. As a linguist, it's very easy to read all these years later, and very clear. And he's super good about explaining what he has how much data for and what he doesn't. And when he's unsure about something, he says what he's unsure of and what data goes one way or the other way. A lot of people won't do that so much.
Mm.
And so I was very familiar with Mark's grammar of Mutsun, and I knew that he was the Klingon guy.
Yeah.
And then I got to meet him through Mutsun, and got to talk with him about the language and so on. And then as I got more into Klingon and started teaching the class, I'm going, you know, I know Mark. And so he's been doing a guest lecture Zoom visit to my Klingon classes, which has been,
that's
but yeah,
amazing.
it's a really surprising and weird connection,
Yeah.
complete chance.
Yeah, but how great is that? That is
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. So I had sort of always paid a little bit of attention to Klingon because some people claim that he based it on Mutsun. He didn't. He very carefully did not. And he talks about this partly because back at that point, Klingons in Trek were presented as very violent. And he didn't want to have any Earth culture become associated with it, because then he would be saying that that Earth culture was all violent and stuff. And so he carefully used like bits and pieces from many different languages. I mean, not bits and pieces from the languages, but based the grammar on things he'd seen in many different languages, so that it wouldn't be based on any particular one, and particularly Mutsun. There is one suffix that's basically the same. And yeah, but other than that, like I had heard this claim that Klingon was based on Mutsun, and I'd heard different things from different people about this. Some people said, oh yeah, absolutely. And some said, no, not at all. And so I always kind of wanted to look into Klingon. And when I looked a little bit into it, I started going, nope, not even close. Nope. Which was really a relief. And so then I knew from that, and as a linguist, it's sort of known that like Klingon has this very unusual basic word order. So in languages of the world, you can look at what order the subject, the verb, and the object come in a normal basic default statement sentence. So if I say, I see the dog, in English, we go subject, verb, object. I, subject, see, verb, the dog, object. If we say that in Japanese, and we actually use a word for I instead of skipping it, dropping it, we get watashi wa inu o miru, inu o mitaru, inu o mita, whatever, make it past. So I, subject, dog, object, see, verb. So in Japanese, the basic word order is subject, object, verb. In English, it's subject, verb, object. Okay, well, it turns out there's lots and lots of languages of the world that are both of those. There's lots that are, we abbreviate this as linguists as S, O, and V, subject, object, and verb. So there's lots and lots that are SVO like English, lots and lots that are SOV like Japanese. Well, looking at that, there's more possible combinations of those three things. And it turns out the least common in the world are object first. So the dog see I, or the dog I see, are both extremely uncommon. To mean I see the dog, not to mean the dog sees me. So when Mark, Dr. Okrand, was designing Klingon, he decided to make it object, verb, subject, OVS, which is either the least common or almost the least common in the world. There's a couple of human languages we know of that do it. They're Native American languages, I think, somewhere in the Caribbean area. Yeah, but not very many. In fact, if you look it up on the Wikipedia page about basic word order and you get down to OVS, and it lists Klingon. Because there's so few.
Yeah.
So Klingon is known to have this. And so when Discovery came out and they had that wonderful first episode starting off with this giant speech entirely in Klingon that clearly they had put the work into and done it well, unlike the Klingon language usage in Next Generation or Voyager or DS9. Clearly they'd put the work in. And so I'm sitting there as a linguist listening to it going, can I hear anything with the object first? I don't know any of these words, but can I hear anything with the object first? And they got to, we remain Klingon. Let us remain Klingon. We shall remain Klingon. Klingon mach tach judge. And they said it quite a few times in that first speech. And I'm going, okay, well, that's not an object, but the fact that the word Klingon comes first in the sentence, may we remain Klingon, that's probably that object initial thing, even though that's not an object. And so without even knowing any of the words, I was listening for basic word order and could pick that one up. And then I'm going, this is fun. But I didn't do anything more with it until my colleague Pam Monroe mentioned that to me about teaching a class, and I proposed it. Our freshman seminars are mostly taught through the Honors College. I proposed it to Honors, and they said, yeah, sounds good to us.
Oh, nice. Oh, good.
And so then I'm going, okay, got to be ready to teach it.
That's
Yeah,
great that
so
there was no resistance either. You brought the idea and instantly they said, yeah, go for it.
yeah, they
That's
liked
good.
the idea. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, as a linguist, Klingon is tremendously fun. If nothing else, I mean, the object initial word order is just, Mark describes it as like an inside joke. And yeah, it makes a wonderful inside joke. The structure of the language, otherwise, it's very verb heavy. A lot of Native American languages are kind of verb heavy. What I mean by that, that's not a technical term. There's often lots of suffixes, possibly also prefixes on the verb. The verb encodes a lot of the information that in English might make a clause or a good part of the sentence with a bunch of adverbs, some extra phrases. And in Klingon, you get a lot of information packed onto the verb. So like continues, this action continues to go on. That's a suffix that goes on the verb. So continuative or causative, cause, let, allow, or make someone do something is a suffix that goes on the verb. So where we would say, I let the kids play outside, that's just play with a suffix. And yeah, so it's a fun language to work with as a linguist.
Yeah, I'm clearly not a linguist, but when I started studying Klingon like 4 different times over the past 25 years, just I want to try. I want to catch some of the words as they're speaking, but I always found that so unique and fascinating because you have the verb, and then I believe there's 9 different categories of suffixes that could go on in a specific order. So
you don't have to worry about the category of them. Actually, you really don't.
Okay, you don't.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about category of the suffixes. You do need to worry about whether a suffix goes on a verb or a noun.
Okay. Yeah, there's 2 different types of suffixes. Yeah.
Yeah, well, English is like that too. So most languages are. Yeah, and you can even have ones that sound pretty much the same or exactly the same, but mean different things depending whether it goes on a verb or a noun. And we have that in English too. So if I say, let's see, if I say dog, dogs, I'm using the z as plural, right? In English. If I say play, plays, I'm using the z, which sounds exactly the same and is spelled the same, to mean third person singular. He, she, or it plays. As opposed to I play, you play, we play, they play. And so the suffix z, spelled with an s, means plural if we put it on a noun, but means third person singular if we put it on a verb.
Very true. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So it's not too weird when Klingon does stuff like that too.
I think just the sheer amount that could get tacked onto a verb, though.
But most verbs don't actually use very many. So 1, 2, 3 suffixes would be reasonable. 9 is not going to happen.
Would that still be considered one word then? That verb with all the suffixes. So it's you could convey just a massive amount of information with the single verb and whatever combination suffixes you add to that verb. That's
and Klingon is not unusual in that compared to human languages. So Navajo has amazing verbs, mostly prefixes rather than suffixes. And by the time you wind up working out what that whole verb means, you can convey amazing amounts of detail about how the action is done and so on in Navajo in one verb. But Navajo is also not, Navajo verbs are very unusual, but it's not unusual in human languages to be able to pack a lot of information into one verb with a bunch of suffixes and some prefixes. Many languages do that. Japanese does that.
Japanese does that. One thing I think now that this time, like I said, I tried to study Klingon like 4 different times, never really seriously. I know I can't go too far with it on my own, but I think this time when I'm studying it, like I'm seeing a lot more similarities with Japanese, and now I know Japanese a heck of a lot more than the last time I looked at Klingon.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this time around it's been a lot easier for me to progress because it's no
Mm-hmm.
longer literally a foreign concept to me because like oh I've seen this done before. I know how this works. Okay, that makes more sense to me now. There's still a lot I've never encountered because I don't know that many languages or have exposure to a lot of different languages than that. But the parts that
Mm-hmm.
do resemble Japanese, it starts to feel more natural when I encounter that similar
Yeah.
concept in
Yeah.
Klingon.
I guess just to give an example, and I'll translate the bits for people who don't speak Japanese, but the suffixes, just trying to come up with something off the top of my head. In Japanese, you could say, ikasemashita kedo. I caused somebody to go, but.
Mm.
So like I sent them there, but I don't know whether they got there or I don't know if they've gotten going yet. Yeah. So we've got the ik, which is to go.
Mm.
We've got the ase, which is causative, cause somebody to do something, let them, ask them to, make them. We've got mas, which is honorific or formal, I guess formal. The ta, which is past tense, and kedo, but, a particle on the end. And so we've just tacked in, what was that? A root for go, causative, formal, past, and then a particle for but. So 3 suffixes plus a particle thingy.
Yeah.
That's about as much as any Klingon verb is likely to have.
So a
And
similar
we've
structure.
expressed, I caused someone to go, but, and the fact that it's formal. So I politely caused someone to go, but, all in one word.
Yeah. But there wouldn't be anything polite in Klingon, right? There would be no.
No, there would not.
Wouldn't have to worry about adding a polite particle onto there, right?
No. Yeah, in fact, you really struggle for ways to say things like thank you or welcome or and that's intentional.
Yeah, I just the whole going back with the Japanese thing. It's I would say it's not accurate, but one thing occurred to me this time while studying Klingon, like the whole the Klingon word success, the kapla for success, it feels like it's used in Klingon very similarly to yoroshiku onegai shimasu in Japanese. Like you just tack it on at the end of something and it just conveys whatever the meaning needs to be at that moment. Like don't mess up, do your best, good luck, success to you, you did great. So I just in my own head canon, it's like, oh, okay, that's the Klingon version of the yoroshiku onegai shimasu.
It's also gambatte. Do well, try hard.
Yeah, it's your all-purpose expression that conveys your culture and a multitude of meaning in just one word. So it's.
I'm going to try and turn around a little bit here so this setting sun isn't putting a stripe across me as much.
Yeah, we're in 2 vastly different time zones. I'm in morning here, and you're in the twilight over there, right? Sun setting for you. Yeah, so apologize for that. Yeah, I don't want to keep you too long because I know you're done with a busy day and just.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
I do want to ask a couple more questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
You were talking about your course, the one that you run, and talking about how you hope it's fun for your students. Like the students who take your course, who enroll in your course, what kind of reaction do you get from them? Like, are they coming in because they like Star Trek? Are they coming in because it just sounds interesting to them, something unique like this? That's not available in many places. In most places in the world, you couldn't find something fun like that. So What kind of reactions do you get?
So the freshman seminars are small. They're intentionally kept small so that the students have a faculty member who they know and can talk to. So my sample isn't very large. So far, each time I've taught the class, and I've taught it 3 times, there's been at least one student who was a total Trekkie. And these guys are mostly 18 because they're freshmen. They're taking it as a freshman seminar. And honestly, there's not that many people in that age range who are Trekkies. So the ones who really are, often their parents got them into it. Yeah, so one of them, I remember saying that Trek was one of the few things that their parents would let them watch on TV. And so
and it's a good thing to
they
watch.
became a Trekkie out of necessity. Yeah. Anyway, so usually at least one in the class is a total diehard Trekkie, and really excited about the class. Like the one who goes into their advisor saying, I have to have this class. I don't care what else I have to reschedule. Find me a section of organic chemistry that lets me take this class.
And, that would have been me had I had the opportunity. I would have been dying to take the course.
And then some of them are like, yeah, I kind of like Trek. It's a good thing. This will be fun. And the rest of them, I haven't really pushed them on why they picked this freshman seminar. They get a choice of a bunch, and this is the only one on this kind of topic usually. And I don't know whether the rest of them are there because they thought, oh, that sounds fun, or whether it was because all the others filled up. I don't know. So I haven't pushed them on that because I don't want to find out how many signed up because all the others filled up or something.
I get that, yeah.
I think by the end, most of them wind up very happy with it.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Like, have you gotten any interesting feedback from any students? Maybe even especially the hardcore Trekkies that come in there, like how they feel by the end of the course?
Not particularly, but they've made it clear in class discussion and activities that they're enjoying it.
Oh, that's great. That like I contacted you, I think first time maybe a bit over a year ago, because that's when I was trying to, the very first time I think
I had done the community ed class. I had done the non-credit community ed class about then.
Yeah, I think that's how I found you, because I was trying to see if there was any kind of Klingon course that I could get, like just an online course or find something. And I think that community course you ran had just ended maybe a month or two prior. So it was one of the first things that popped up. And like, oh, I need to get in touch with this person and find out if she does like more on this. So I think that like just the fact finding this information out there and seeing like there are live face-to-face in-person courses that are just teaching how interesting a language this constructed language is, like at actual universities, not just like a fan group somewhere doing that, but you're getting an official thing by a professor who is trained in linguistics, has a doctorate in your field, explaining all of this information. I think that is, as a fan and also as someone who enjoys studying, who enjoys education, I just think that is beautiful, that it's not just for Star Trek itself, but also the hard work that Mark Okran put into it, and that you are helping to spread just how creative and useful it is. A full functioning language these days, that it's out there and you're spreading the word.
I wouldn't say it's quite a full human language. The vocabulary is still too limited to do everything you need to do, and there's ways around that, but the Klingon fan community very much defer to Dr. Okrand. They don't go making up a whole bunch of new words without his permission. And so, as linguists, we point out very often that all human languages are equally good for doing all the things we do with language, and all dialects of all human languages. So, so the things we do with language, we convey information, that's obvious. We also do things like persuade or make poetry. and those are other uses of language. And you can do all of those equally well with any human language. So if you speak a language that doesn't have a word for hard drive, and now you need a word for hard drive, you will come up with one. Whether you borrow it from another language or make a compound out of a couple of pieces of your language that you do have. And so it's not like some languages are primitive and inadequate and can't be used for everything. That's just not true. All human languages can be used equally well to do all the things we want to do with language. And that's also true of all dialects. This is something linguists find it very important to convey. So for example, in this country, in the US, there is a lot of prejudice against African American English. It's extremely stigmatized. You can do everything with African American English that you can do with what we sometimes call standard American English, although maybe we shouldn't call it standard. It's just that one of those two is considered prestigious for job interviews and educational settings and boardrooms, and one of them is not. But you can do everything in African American English that you do with language. And Klingon is not there yet. You can't do everything in it. Now, if it were to take off with a large fan group or even a small fan group, really making the effort to use it for everything, and if they were not deferring to Mark on creation of all new words, then it could well become a full human language, but it isn't at this point.
It's getting close.
But yeah,
people
can speak it and have conversations in it.
I just comparing to the first time I started studying, like maybe 1995, 96, whatever that was, and then going now and seeing the vast amount of vocabulary that's been added in the 20 years, like, wow, this has been going strong.
The published translation of the entire of Hamlet.
I saw that on Amazon.
Not to be, they did the whole thing.
Yeah. Do you have a copy of that?
Just amazing. Yep, you bet I have a copy of that.
I'm tempted. I mean, I don't know the language.
I have not read my copy of that, but I have used a few pages as a handout for class when I show them a video on YouTube of a guy doing the to be or not to be speech.
Yes. The fact that they can make books, and I saw a couple other written in all Klingon. I don't know how official they are, but yeah, the Hamlet one came up. Just the fact that they've done the like what did they say? Like, you never haven't experienced Shakespeare until you've read him in the original Klingon.
Klingon.
Now you can.
One line in one of the movies, it led to someone putting that much work in.
And they did it. They accomplished it. That is that just goes to show how far it's come, and I'm sure as long as, like, I mean, we have professors like you and Mark Okran still leading the way and keeping people interested. I hope it goes another 20 some years and keeps building more and more. That would be so good. Yeah. I want to just ask if because we're approaching an hour on this, so just for anyone who might be interested in starting to study the language, or maybe even just any language in general, that's vastly different from their own, do you have like any advice on what are the things to keep in mind when you're moving into a language like Klingon, or just starting a new language? If you're someone like me who has very little talent for speaking even his own native English, do you have any kind of tips or advice to share?
Okay, I gotta say something to that comment first. Native speakers are the authority on their language. If you're a native speaker of a language and you say that something is how you say it, then that's how you say it. So as linguists, we are descriptivists, not prescriptivists. We don't tell people how to talk, we study how they talk. And so it's not a matter of talent on speaking your own language. There probably is some talent involved in how well people learn another language, but people can learn other languages. People in general really can. I guess people think that you learn language by taking a language class in a classroom. That can certainly give you a boost. and can help you get a good start. So for example, I'm really glad I took 2 years of college Japanese before I first moved to Japan. Helped tremendously. But the way that you actually learn a language is by getting huge quantities of natural language input poured in your ears. So hearing lots and lots and lots of natural use of the language, and ideally sitting there over a table while you drink tea for hours and hours on end with a patient person who is willing to speak the language with you. That's how you learn a language, is by getting a lot of natural input. And it doesn't hurt to learn some of the grammar first. It'll speed things up, make it easier to figure out. But you don't learn a language by taking language classes, sad as that is. And so the thing to do to learn a language is to try to get yourself in an environment where you can hear it and use it a lot. But starting with a grammar book or a class isn't a bad idea either.
Makes it difficult when the language is a constructed language like Klingon.
Yes. Yeah, and this actually ties in with language revitalization, where you don't have a fluent speaker who you can just go spend time with. The way that when I first moved to Japan, I had a wonderful host mother in my family who loved to take in foreign students and would talk and talk and talk and talk with me. Yeah, and then I moved to a different host family that where it was the grandmother. I think maybe she was lonely too, so maybe I was of benefit. And that's how I learned Japanese, talking with my grandmother, host grandmother. Yeah, in a constructed language, it's certainly much harder to do that. The fans have done their best. The really diehard Klingon language fans have done their best to make a lot available. And so I think on learning a language like Klingon, it's going to be more analytical, that you start more from the grammar, from the intro to the dictionary that explains the grammar, and then start trying to work on it. And this is where what I do with Klingon is I have not been really trying to learn to carry on a conversation. I parse it and like, can I share screen?
Yeah, let's.
Can I share a handout?
Do you have the option to do that?
Yes, it looks like it'll work.
Okay, there we go.
Are you seeing are you seeing lines from the beginning of Discovery?
Yes.
With translations under them. Yeah.
Yes.
So this is what linguists call an interlinear gloss. So we take a line of Klingon. Are you seeing my mouse move as well?
Yes, I can see that too. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So we take a line of Klingon, and I used the beginning of that first episode of Discovery because it provided us this wonderful corpus of Klingon. Suddenly we had a corpus of large amounts of speech that had been checked and carefully coached, even better. And on top of that, on the Klingon language wiki online, somebody, I don't know who to thank, has put together the text of all of the Klingon used during at least the first season of Discovery, as well as the translations given in the English subtitles. Oh. And so it's a corpus. And so if you're sitting there going, so how does this plural suffix work anyway? I want to find some more examples of it. You can search it. For linguists, a corpus means like a collection of a bunch of language. It can be text or it can be speech, but a collection of a bunch of language that you can search for certain things. So if you're going, okay, how does this plural suffix work? There's 2 plural suffixes. What's the difference anyway? I have an idea. Then you can search it for more places that have that plural suffix. And then you can see if your hypothesis about which plural suffix does what holds up when you find some more sentences that it's in. And so with that huge amount of Klingon at the beginning of Discovery, and with the Klingon language wiki having a Google Doc with the entire thing in it, it provided us this thing that we could use to learn from. And this is fairly often how linguists learn a lot about a language, if not learning how to actually have a conversation. So what we're doing here is we take a line of Klingon, and then under it, we put the meaning of each morpheme. And a morpheme is the smallest bit that contains meaning, that has meaning. So for example, in dogs, that's 2 morphemes. Dog and z are separate morphemes because dog means the canine and z means plural. And so we separate it out into each part that is a morpheme, each part that has its own meaning. And so like in this one, Cheshel, Adam, Maj, our, et, makes it the topic of the sentence. And so we can put what each bit means underneath it, and then what the whole sentence means. And so what I've done is taking the English subtitles, which are much more of a free translation, sort of approximately what it should mean in good English. That's not a stilted translation. And then taken each line, taken each line for a ways, enough for my class, and tried to work through, okay, what's making this verb? So like here, this one, we've got nutach mach. I've got to work on my pronunciation. I'm out of practice. Nutach moch boch. Yeah, that's the verb. Nutach moch boch. And that whole verb turns out to mean which, what goes on with the which? Yeah, which causes us to survive. And the thing that does the causing has to be third person. Yeah, which causes us to survive. And so you can get a lot of practice figuring out how does the grammar of this language work by sitting there with the dictionary, figuring out, okay, which part of this is the actual verb root? What are all these suffixes? And then pretty soon you've seen these suffixes before and you get used to them. And you're going, oh, moch, causative. Yeah, I know that one. And then it's really fun to take the original English subtitles and try and look at it and go, okay, how could this wind up meaning that? Yeah, that could wind up meaning that. I've also done some of this with Klingon, what does she call herself? Klingon warrior woman, pop warrior woman, the Klingon pop warrior who sings.
Yeah.
And who translates pop songs into Klingon.
Yes.
And the students who I'm teaching, freshmen, they were all raised on Let It Go, right?
Yeah.
They were of the generation that either they or their younger siblings insisted on listening to Let It Go in their parents' car 1,000 times in a row.
Yeah.
And so they know that song. And so I took the Klingon version of Let It Go by Warrior Woman, and also did interlinear glossing, interlinear translations of a bunch of the lyrics from Let It Go. And the students know the song, they know the meaning, they know the context, they can appreciate the music. So it's a great way to start learning how does a language like this with a lot of complexity in the structure of a word, especially the verbs, how does a language like this work? And how do you wind up making a meaning that comes out to this thing? They contain us and encase us and take away all which causes us to survive. I forget what that was in the English subtitles, but it wasn't that. Anyway, yeah, so that's one of the things I've done with class that has also helped me with learning it tremendously.
Yeah, this is so
but again,
helpful.
Not
this
for learning it
so
conversationally. It's for learning the structure and how does this language work.
Yeah.
And if I want to convey this, how might I make a verb that would convey this? Because I can't find a verb that means exactly that in the dictionary. So
you have to be creative and work around to get the meaning that you want.
Yeah, so like here's an example. The Klingon sentence translated more or less literally means we cause the 24 houses which continuously fight to resume needing to be together in our empire. And the original English subtitle was we reunite the 24 warring houses into our empire. So how are you going to express reunite? Cause to need to be together.
That's how they put it together.
To reunite them. Yeah. So I cause them to need to be together is I reunite.
That is so interesting. Yeah.
And you can see that even though the English translation comes out pretty long, the Klingon
is very short.
One word.
Oh yeah, because it's a prefix and 3 suffixes, right?
A prefix, a root, and 3 suffixes. Jetai nish, let's see, yeah. Jetai nish ka moch.
And that conveys the we cause the 24
That
houses which
conveys.
continuously fight to resume needing to be together in our empire. That's
Oh,
amazing.
actually, no, sorry. That's the end of the sentence. The previous line was the
Oh,
rest of the
okay.
sentence. So that
For the
doesn't convey the
24
entire
houses, yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it
just the
conveys
whole the verb phrase, right?
we reunite them. It covers we reunite them.
The tiny that is so cool. This document though, that is so helpful. I mean, because if you're not familiar with the structure of the language itself, especially how it can look confusing with trying to find out what is the actual root and what is a different word if you're not familiar, where what the prefix or the suffixes may be, that there is a root inside there. This is such a nice way of breaking it down so you could spot the root and then you become familiar with what those suffixes and prefixes are, so it makes it easier to spot the root the next time along, because you'll see clearly this is a suffix, this is a prefix. Oh, this is so helpful.
Are you seeing verb prefixes now?
Yes. You sent me this document a year ago, and this has been so helpful to me. I'm so grateful for this. Thank you so much. Yes.
If somebody wants to start learning Klingon, this is like after pronunciation. I have a handout on pronunciation too, but once they've got a basic pronunciation feeling down, this is the place to start, is these verb prefixes. And they are so hard. I don't know how much practice it would take to get to where you could just like say verbs and get the verb prefix right without stopping to look it up and think about who's the subject, who's the object. Yeah. That's part of why I have not tried to learn it conversationally, is that I'm not sure I'm interested in practicing enough to get to where that comes naturally.
I would like to, but yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. So for each verb, you have to think about who is the subject and who is the object. Whether you state them or not, you might state them overtly. So like this one here, Yash velech jich, I see the officers. And notice officers is first because of object first word order. And I is last. So I, the subject at the end, officers, the object at the beginning, and the verb in between. So here, even though Yash, the officers, the object is stated, you still need that prefix on it, vi, which tells you that the subject is I and the object is them. Yeah, so looking up in this chart here, we got vi here and vi here. So I is the subject and the object could be either him, her, it, or them. And so for each verb, you got to figure out who's the subject, who's the object, and stick the right prefix on it.
Yeah.
And if one is just trying to like slowly construct sentences, that's very doable, very learnable. If one is trying to have a conversation, it strikes me as very hard. But to just construct some sentences or to parse, like what I showed before, where you've got a sentence that someone who knows what they're doing has made, and now you want to figure out the parts of it. This is the first thing that you need to look at is, oh, that looks like a verb prefix. Let's have a hypothesis that that's a verb prefix.
Yeah.
If it was, who would be the subject and the object? Does this fit in my sentence? Which is not so different from human language. Like in Latin, you have to do that. Everything is marked for place, gender, number, for person, gender, number, sorry. And in Latin, like you can have your adjective over here and the noun it goes with way over there on the next line. And so you're constantly looking at, okay, does this one agree with that one? Oh, there's an object. Good, I needed an object for this sentence. That's an accusative. Good, I got an object. And so this process of looking at a sentence, looking at a verb, going, oh, look, that looks like a verb prefix. Okay, then we can figure out what the subject and the object are. Does this fit and where I think this sentence is going meaning-wise? That's not so different from a human language like Latin. And Old English was much, much worse on this. Our ancestors, if we are English speakers and if we're ethnically from an area that spoke English, if we have ancestors who spoke Old English, they dealt with much, much worse than this in terms of agreement of parts of the word, parts of the sentence.
Yeah,
Um,
I
yeah,
can't
so
even
this is where
imagine.
to start. After you deal with pronunciation, this is where to start on learning Klingon.
I will say this is what stopped me dead in my tracks the first two times I started studying Klingon. This right here. And so when you sent me this a year ago, I looked at it, it felt like discovering the Rosetta Stone. It's like, oh my god, I have a visual
It's
right
in the
here.
dictionary
Yeah,
app.
it's in the
So
app,
in the
and
dictionary app,
yeah.
on the upper left under the like other symbol or something, you can actually, on the app, I mean, on your phone or iPad, you can go straight to a list of the verb prefixes that's formatted about like this.
Oh, you just taught me another new thing there. There we go. I now have it.
Yeah, that
Okay.
dictionary,
Yeah.
that electronic dictionary is
Yeah.
incredibly well made. It is so
Yeah.
good.
I was stunned when I found this. This was one of the first things I downloaded. Probably about the same time I contacted you a year ago. I'm just trying to gather resources and find that, and I wasn't really studying, so I didn't get too deep into it. So I never even found that chart
Yeah,
there.
I
But
didn't find that for a long time either.
it's
I was thinking it'd be handy if they had. Oh, look, they have that
they
here.
have it.
Yes,
No, but when
yeah,
I
because
got
like
this from you, yeah, that was gold.
I give this as a handout to the students, and I'm like, okay, keep this hard copy with you at all times.
Oh yeah.
You're always going to want it.
Yeah. And I'm the kind of student when I study, I need a hard copy too. I need paper. So it's nice to have on the app, but I use the phone for so many other things, looking things up. So I'd like having actual paper I'm holding in my hands that I can look at rather than the screen. So this I don't know how many copies I've made of this page, and I just would white out the things and just like randomly test myself as I'm going through. Like, do I remember what this one is? Do I remember what it is? Just keep
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
side. Yeah. So yeah,
One
this
other
is
tip
hard.
on learning Klingon:
Yes.
always type, if you're typing Klingon or dealing with it on your computer, always use a font with serifs,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
otherwise capital I looks
Yeah.
like L.
Yeah, and
And
unfortunately,
especially,
Duolingo doesn't have a serif font on their Klingon program, and there's been a
yeah, I
couple I'm
tried
staring
Duolingo
at it,
Klingon for a bit.
like
Yeah,
like it's either Li or Il, and I always guess wrong. It comes up wrong. Like, well, it's your fault, Duolingo.
yeah. Well, that mostly you can get it from syllable structure.
Mm-hmm.
So this is another linguist thing. Um, Klingon is maximally consonant vowel consonant with just a
Mm.
couple of exceptions. So no syllable can be greater than consonant vowel consonant, a couple exceptions. And a great many syllables are CVC. We abbreviate that, consonant vowel consonant.
Mm-hmm.
And then the verb prefixes are generally consonant vowel, like these all are,
Mm.
ve, sha, ga, nu. And so you can find your way in a lot of the structure by knowing the syllable structure, but still the I and the L, it's just impossible. So yeah, just put it in a font with serifs.
Yeah, very, very, very good point.
Mhm.
That yeah, the this chart though, I mean this page, a lot of the documents that you sent me, like from that course you did last year, they've been so helpful. I'm still not really far in my studies, and unfortunately, since when I first started to set up the interview with you a couple months ago, it's taken some time. A lot more has been happening at work and at home that my Klingon practice has trailed off. So any other big questions I was building up to ask you for this interview probably faded away with my memory as other obligations took over. But no, definitely, I do want to thank you for sending that, and even sharing here, and also letting everyone know if it's on the app. If you go get
Mm-hmm.
the Klingon dictionary, it's right there. I never saw it.
But that dictionary is so good. The
It's
app
really good.
dictionary, it's really well designed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's. I have a really good paid for Japanese dictionary on my phone, and I think the Klingon one rivals it in just how useful, in depth,
Mm.
and just how well created it is. There's no problems using it. Like when I think when you get a Star Trek fan to set their mind to something, they really go overboard to make sure the quality is high level.
Yes. Yes.
That was no. I again we're we're already over an hour, so I think we should bring this to a close now. It's getting late for
Yep.
you,
Yep.
and I love talking to you about this. I love hearing everything you had to say. Not just about the language, which again I would love to hear more, but just Star Trek in general too. As I mentioned, you're welcome back anytime you want to talk about anything you want about Star Trek. I mean, we love to have people who are passionate about Star Trek talk together and share your own point of view. So please, if you ever want to come back, don't be a stranger.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But before we go, before I sign off here, do you want to? Is there anything you would like that you're doing? Maybe a course, or maybe some of the works you've done that you would like to mention to the viewer in case they're interested?
I don't have anything Trek related
Mm-hmm.
that I can really bring up. The class is a University of Arizona class, obviously. So high school students should go to University of Arizona. That'd
There
be
you
a good
go.
idea.
Yeah, great idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have anything Trek related to bring up. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if there's ever anything you want to share, even if it's non-Trek related, please. You are a friend of the Final Frontiersmen, so you're like we'll gladly promote anything you're doing anytime. But I want to thank you again, Professor Warner, for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your stories, your knowledge, and just all the fascinating stuff that you do. If you ever do an online course and you are accepting students from Japan, please let me know because I will
Well,
be
if
there
we
to
do
sign
the
up.
community ed one, I don't know if next time if we should try it online or in person. The last time I offered it was at a time when we were really trying to get more things back to in person, or the university was trying to. And so mine was the first community ed class offered in person again at that point.
Oh wow.
And yeah, but I don't know, doing it online might make the timing easier for a lot of people. So I don't know. If we do the community ed class again, I'll certainly make sure to let you know.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and we'll spread the word to whoever's interested on the channel. But
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I want to thank you again. Thank you for giving your time. Thank you for making the time, and thank you for putting up with how long it took to finally schedule this.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
But I'll let you know when this goes up on the channel. But it's going to be
Great.
following some Klingon videos we're doing. So perfect timing, actually. It worked out in the end. But that's all for today. Thank you, anyone who's watching this, anyone who's interested. I'll put links to all the useful stuff we discussed in the video description. But finally, one more time, thank you very much, Professor Warner, for joining us, and thank you to everyone out there. See you next time.